Yeah, I think yeah, Nietzsche, on the intellectual journey that he was on as a young man, he would have come across
Hmm.
Schopenhauer at some point. So, whether he came across him at age 19 or 23, that's to some extent accidental. But Schopenhauer is a giant in the landscape, and he's
Sure.
going to get there. Any number of hugely important intellectuals in the late 1800s and on into the early 1900s, Albert Einstein among them, have engaged with Schopenhauer, and so he's incredibly important. So I think the question then is going to be, um, Schopenhauer, of course, has a reputation for being one of the great pessimists, right, of the world. Lines like, it's better not to have been born,
Exactly.
and than to
Life is essentially
exist and
pointless.
be a deep thinker and realize the ultimate, not only just painful, emptiness of the world, but the utter misery and
Hmm.
senselessness and suffering that is at the
Yeah.
heart of
Would have been a
existence.
downer to
So
hang around with.
about as pessimistic as one can get. And it's not just kind of this grand metaphysical thing, that life is suffering, life is pain, our bodies betray us, our friends betray us, and
Hmm.
then we all die. It's this point that there is no redemption to be found anywhere. Perhaps some minor consolations occasionally in music, but even in music, Schopenhauer thinks the best music is ultimately tragic. So the point is going to be that if you see Schopenhauer as an early 1800s guy, what he is putting together is kind of the ultimate anti-enlightenment package of beliefs. So by the time we get to the Enlightenment, you've got lots of thinkers who are saying, okay, maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't a God. But what we can say is that there is a natural world. The natural world is a place of cause and effect. It's intelligible. By doing science, we can figure stuff out. It's an orderly universe. On the basis of that, we can make predictions. Ultimately, since we're pretty smart, we can engage in controlling and bending the world to fit our needs. And so we can progress and solve all of the problems of ignorance and poverty and so on. And so it's a very
Hmm.
optimistic era. Maybe there's a God behind the scenes who designed the universe and kind of underwrites the causality of the universe. And maybe the universe is this grand self-organizing system, and there is no God. But nonetheless, it's a benevolent causal world that is hospitable to human design, human values, and we can make progress, and we can celebrate the fact that we are rational beings, and we have a strong measure of autonomy over forming our characters, and taking control of our lives and happiness. The pursuit of happiness really is the
Hmm.
is the human birthright. So by the time though we get to Schopenhauer, we have an intellectual current where all of that has just been exploded, right? There is no God
Hmm.
underwriting the universe. And not only that, this so-called causal universe where everything is orderly and intelligible, that's also been exploded. Schopenhauer believes when we have our best possible understanding of the way the universe is, and this is not actually something that we can do very well. We realize that the universe is not at all orderly. It's just this seething, irrational, unpredictable will. And rather than us having control over that, we are just flotsam and jetsam, pushed around by
Hmm.
forces beyond our control, including our own internal controls. And so we're out of control. The universe is out of control. And to the extent that there's anything dominant in us, it's these seething, conflictual desires that lead us to have self loathing, to see other people as enemies, not to trust them, right, and so on. And then ultimately, we're just going to die, and life is ultimately meaningless. And so, your realization of that as a rational human being, to the extent that you're rational, that's not a source of
Hmm.
delight, that's a source of pain, right? So a dog or some animal might lead a miserable existence and then get eaten by a crocodile, and it's all pointless and so forth. But we are realizations, right? We have the realization, right, that we are ultimately going to be eaten by crocodiles or some other horrible thing that is just going to take us down, and that makes existence
Hmm.
horrifying ultimately. So that's where we are. And to the extent that you read that as a very smart teenager, well, you can project what the psychological manifestations of that are going to be. Most of us go through, some teenage self doubts and senses of alienation and not having great relationships with our parents and our peers and wondering about what our lives are going to need and so forth. So just take all of that and put it on steroids. Then you will have Nietzsche's intellectual context